Hey there, sleepyheads! Welcome back to the channel. Before we drift into tonight's tale of the eternal archive where memories go when forgotten, I'd love to know where in the world you're watching from tonight, and what time it is for you right now. Drop it in the comments below. It's always magical seeing how far and wide this sleepy little community reaches. All right, lights low, blankets up, let's begin. In the land of Ooh, things have a strange way of disappearing. Not with a bang or a blaze, but with a whisper like the slow exhale of something that's finally ready to rest. A name once spoken often becomes a soundless echo. A place that once shimmered with life may fade beneath layers of grass and dust, until even the memory of it feels uncertain, as if it never truly existed at all. But what if disappearance is not the same as destruction? What if to vanish means to be archived? There are moments in Adventure Time where we see this quiet, unraveling objects, ideas, and even entire beings slipping away without explanation. And yet the world never seems emptier for it. Instead, it feels as though these things are gently set aside, tucked somewhere safe, into a place beyond time's reach. A place not of endings, but of storage. Segment 1. Hey there, sleepyheads! Welcome back to the channel. Before we drift into tonight's tale of the eternal archive where memories go when forgotten, I'd love to know where in the world you're watching from tonight, and what time it is for you right now. Drop it in the comments below. It's always magical seeing how far and wide this sleepy little community reaches. All right, lights low, blankets up, let's begin. In the land of Ooh, things have a strange way of disappearing. Not with a bang or a blaze, but with a whisper like the slow exhale of something that's finally ready to rest. A name once spoken often becomes a soundless echo. A place that once shimmered with life may fade beneath layers of grass and dust, until even the memory of it feels uncertain, as if it never truly existed at all. But what if disappearance is not the same as destruction? What if to vanish means to be archived? There are moments in Adventure Time where we see this quiet, unraveling objects, ideas, and even entire beings slipping away without explanation. And yet the world never seems emptier for it. Instead, it feels as though these things are gently set aside, tucked somewhere safe, into a place beyond time's reach. A place not of endings, but of storage. The people of Ooh might not notice it happening. The Candy Kingdom continues its joyful hum. The Sky Kingdoms drift lazily over the clouds, and deep beneath the ancient ruins of forgotten civilizations rest in a strange kind of peace. If you listen closely, though, you might hear something faint, the rustle of parchment, the hum of a distant wind, the whisper of a name that once was. It's the sound of memory itself, quietly organizing what the world has chosen to forget. Somewhere in the folds between waking and dreaming lies a vast and gentle realm, what we might call the eternal archive. It is not a place you can walk to. It has no coordinates, no door, and no map. It exists where memory goes when it's no longer needed, where stories that have faded from the minds of mortals are still gently kept, cataloged by the soft machinery of the universe itself. Imagine it for a moment. You're standing in a space that isn't quite light or dark, surrounded by endless rows of shelves made not of wood but of glimmering threads of thought. Each thread hums faintly, holding the memory of something that once existed, a childhood drawing long since lost. A forgotten melody hummed by a traveler, a kingdom that stood before Ooh even had a name. These memories do not sleep. They simply rest. They drift in stillness, preserved in the quiet rhythm of eternity. It's said that time does not pass within the archive because time itself is a kind of memory. To forget time is to escape its flow. If you've ever had a dream that felt achingly familiar but impossible to place, or a fleeting image in your mind that vanishes before you can grasp it, maybe, just maybe, That was the archive brushing against your consciousness, the faint static of something long forgotten, still humming somewhere in the background of existence. Ooh has always been built from the remnants of what came before. The surface may shimmer with candy-colored wonder, but beneath it lies the sediment of countless ages, the bones of the old world, and the quiet pulse of all its lost dreams. The Mushroom War ended long ago, yet echoes of it still linger. Half-buried machines, fragments of old human culture, songs that no one remembers writing. They are the whispers of a civilization long folded into the archive. Sometimes these remnants resurface. A broken robot wanders the wasteland. A ruined city reappears in the fog. A memory flickers in the mind of someone who never lived it. It's as if the archive, for reasons of its own, lets a few fragments slip back into the waking world, testing whether they still have meaning, whether the world is ready to remember them again. Even the magic of ooh seems tied to memory. Spells work because someone remembers how to shape them. Enchanted objects retain echoes of those who wielded them. When a person forgets the meaning behind their power, that power fades not destroyed, but simply returned to the archive, waiting for the next dreamer to find it. Perhaps this is why ooh feels so alive, so layered, because beneath every strange creature and glittering kingdom lies a hidden lineage of memory, the accumulation of everything that once was. Every forgotten name, every half-remembered lullaby, every crumbling castle overtaken by moss. They are all still somewhere. The idea of the archive gives a strange kind of comfort. To imagine that nothing is ever truly lost, only resting that, even when we forget, the universe remembers for us. It watches over our memories like a librarian, turning the pages of an endless book, keeping each story in its place until the time comes to read it again. And if that's true, then perhaps ooh itself is one vast, living library. The sky, the earth, the dreamlands, all sections of a cosmic record, bound together by the quiet hum of memory. Every moment we see in the show, every laugh, every tear, every strange adventure, may simply be one page in that boundless archive, a story being read aloud across eternity. The archive is not something the heroes of ooh ever set out to find. It isn't a quest or a treasure waiting to be claimed. It exists quietly beyond the need for discovery. You could walk the deserts of ooh for 1,000 years and never stumble upon it, because it does not live in the physical world. It breathes within the folds of perception, in the quiet pauses between remembering and forgetting. If you've ever seen something that felt both familiar and strange, a flicker of recognition that fades before you can grasp why, that is where the archive touches us. It is the soft pulse at the edge of consciousness, where the forgotten lies patiently, waiting for someone to remember. Ooh's reality seems to bend around this principle. When something fades, the world simply reshapes itself around the absence. The Candy Kingdom loses a festival, and no one recalls it ever existed. A forest spirit ceases to appear, and the trees close their roots over its old shrine. Even Finn and Jake, through their long journey, sometimes stumble upon ruins or creatures that have no place in the stories anyone remembers. It's as if the world politely makes space for forgetting. There's a kind of magic in that. The ability to let go, to allow what once was to sink softly beneath the surface. It keeps ooh from being crushed by the weight of its own history. Because the past in this land is heavy, it stretches back through fire, through war, through the slow decay of countless lives. If every memory remained awake, the world would drown in its own echoes. So the archive takes them, not as punishment or erasure, but as mercy. It offers rest to exhausted stories. It allows joy and pain alike to settle into stillness. If one could stand at the threshold of the archive, perhaps it would look like a place between dream and dust. The air would shimmer with quiet movement, the color of old ink and morning fog. There would be no sound, only the gentle vibration of things once spoken. You might see fragments floating a child's toy, a forgotten crown, a fragment of song curling through the air like smoke. Everything here has meaning, even if no one remembers what that meaning is. And somewhere, deeper in that vast silence, there might be figures moving slowly between the shelves, not quite people, not quite spirits. The first tenders of memory. They might carry no faces, only faint outlines of light, as if shaped by the recollection of form rather than the form itself. They drift like librarians of dream, cataloging what the world has released. Each time a memory fades from ooh, a new whisper reaches them, a name, a feeling, an image, and they find it a home in the infinite stacks. Perhaps this is why dreams in ooh feel so tangible. When Finn dreams, he sometimes walks through places that should not exist anymore, crumbled kingdoms, echoes of lost battles, or faces from lives he doesn't remember. These might be fragments the archive has kept safe, resurfacing in his subconscious. Dreams become a bridge, allowing brief visits into the corridors of forgotten time. And yet there is a gentle melancholy to all of this, because if everything that's forgotten still exists somewhere, then nothing truly ends. Even grief lingers, sleeping but unspent. A broken friendship, a lost home, an old fear, all stored quietly, their essence humming faintly among the countless other echoes. It means that ooh is haunted, but not in a frightening way. It is haunted by its own memory, by love, by laughter, by loss, all folded neatly into invisible pages. You can feel it when the wind passes through empty fields, or when a distant melody drifts across the plains. That's the archive speaking in its soft language, reminding the living that they are never alone in what they've forgotten. Somewhere beneath the stars, a story is being remembered even now, one that no one can consciously recall. And the stars themselves may be its punctuation, shining like dots of ink across a night made of parchment. The eternal archive doesn't judge what it keeps. It holds the trivial and the profound with equal tenderness. A forgotten lunch recipe rests beside a lost prophecy. A child's drawing shares space with the memory of a fallen empire. There's a beautiful equality to it in the end. Every memory, no matter how small, is given the same piece. And maybe that's what makes it eternal. Not its vastness, but its gentleness. The way it treats each forgotten thing as sacred. The way it turns absence into quiet presence. The people of ooh rarely think about where their forgotten dreams go. They don't need to. The archive does not ask to be known. It exists simply because forgetting is necessary, and memory deserves a place to rest. If you could listen closely enough, past the chatter of the day and the hum of adventure, you might hear it even now, the soft shuffle of pages, the whisper of time being folded, one memory at a time, into the great hush of forever. The eternal archive, if one could truly perceive it, would feel less like a place and more like a feeling, a pulse beneath existence. It is the hush after a story ends, the echo that lingers after laughter fades. It is the warmth of a candle's last flicker, carrying the memory of light, even as darkness folds in around it. Ooh has always been a world steeped in magic, but not all of its magic glows or sparkles. Some of it is quieter, more patient. The archive belongs to that kind. It works invisibly, not to grant wishes or shape destinies, but to preserve the soft essence of being. Every thought, every moment, every dream that slips away, it catches them gently before they vanish. It keeps them safe. When you think about how much the world has already lived through, it's almost impossible to comprehend. Empires that once ruled the skies, creatures who sang languages no one remembers, cities buried under the earth. They've all gone still now, their names dissolved into myth, and yet their memories persist somewhere, shimmering like faint stars just beyond the veil. Sometimes the archive seems to breathe into the world again. A fragment of melody returns as a lullaby hummed by someone who's never heard it before. A pattern of stars realigns, mirroring an ancient banner no one's seen for millennia. A phrase, once written in an extinct language, appears in a passing breeze, whispering through leaves. These are moments when the archive exhales, releasing tiny motes of its infinite memory back into living time. It's tempting to think of this as magic, but perhaps it's simply the rhythm of remembrance. The world cannot hold everything at once. It forgets to survive and remembers to feel alive again. And within this rhythm, we begin to see why forgetting is not an absence, but a cycle. In forgetting allows for rebirth. When an old kingdom fades from memory, the land reclaims it. Rivers carve new paths. Forests take root. New life blooms in the cracks of old stone. When a person forgets an old sorrow, they make space for new joy. The archive doesn't steal these memories away. It simply holds them until the world is ready to create again. Even time itself seems to obey this quiet law. The past, the present, and the future fold together like overlapping pages, written and rewritten by those who live and those who have been. The more you look, the more feels like a dream that remembers itself in cycles, a world that rewrites its own story through the gentle hand of forgetting. There's something peaceful about imagining it that way. To think that the ruins scattered across the land are not failures or tragedies, but resting stories. They've served their time in the waking world, and now belong to something softer, deeper the archive's embrace. And maybe in some way, Finn and Jake have touched the edges of it without realizing. Every time Finn learns something, only to lose it later. Every time Jake drifts through a dream that feels older than his own life, they're brushing against the currents of the archive. They carry fragments of forgotten ages in their hearts, like travelers walking through a landscape built from other people's dreams. Finn, with his endless curiosity, often stumbles into echoes of what came before. A broken sword, a spirit of the past, a faint symbol carved into stone. Each discovery feels new, but it's also a reunion, the archive revealing a page it's been saving for him. Jake, on the other hand, moves through life with a kind of serene acceptance, as though he already understands that everything will eventually return to stillness. He doesn't fear forgetting. He knows that love, laughter, and friendship are a part of something larger, that even when the details fade, the feeling remains. Perhaps the Eternal Archive isn't only a repository of memory, but also the quiet consciousness of itself, the planet's way of dreaming. A record written not in words, but in sensation, the way sunlight feels on skin, the taste of adventure, the ache of goodbyes. These sensations are too vast for individuals to carry, so the world carries them instead. In this sense, every forgotten thing becomes part of a greater whole. Each loss contributes to the balance. Each memory adds texture to the dreamscape of existence. The archive is not a void, but a living pulse, the heart that beats beneath Oo's surface, unseen but essential. And if you think of it that way, then forgetting is not the opposite of remembering. It's the continuation of it, the other half of a cosmic breath. To forget is to trust that something greater will hold your memory for you, to release what no longer needs to be carried. So maybe, when the heroes sleep and the stars whisper softly overhead, the archive listens. It gathers their fading dreams, their worries, their half-formed hopes. It keeps them until morning, returning only what the soul still needs. The rest the fragments of yesterday it stores in its boundless vaults, where they can shine quietly, without pain or purpose, simply existing. If you could peer into it at that moment, you'd see something beautiful. 1,000 colors drifting like mist, each one a forgotten moment, a lost conversation, an erased drawing, a promise once made under the night sky. Together, they form a tranquil constellation of memory, flickering gently in the dark. It's not sad. It's not lonely. It's simply still the perfect silence of things that have found their place in eternity. If we linger a little longer within that stillness, we might begin to understand why Ooh feels so dreamlike, as though the world itself is half awake, half asleep. The eternal archive hums beneath its surface, pulling forgotten threads downward and letting new ones rise, weaving the past into the present so seamlessly that one becomes the reflection of the other. Every story in Ooh carries traces of earlier ones. A song sung by Flame Princess echoes faintly with a rhythm once known by the Fire Kingdom's first rulers. The Ice King's sorrow holds the temperature of Simon Petrikov's long-buried compassion. Even the Candy Kingdom's laughter carries the distant heartbeat of those who once lived before the war. The archive doesn't erase these echoes, it softens them, letting them blend into the living fabric of the world. And this is the quiet secret of all things in Ooh. Nothing is ever truly new. Everything is a recollection, retold in a new voice, a pattern restitched from threads that have been here since the beginning. The heroes, the monsters, the gods, they are all part of a single, long remembering, one that stretches beyond the edges of time. Sometimes, when twilight deepens over the land, you can almost feel the archive stirring. The shadows lengthen, the wind slows, and the colors of the world begin to fade, as if being carefully pressed between pages. This is when the veil between the living and the remembered thins. The air becomes thick with the scent of old stories, and the stars overhead seem to blink in a language that only the forgotten can read. If you were to stand on a quiet hill then, you might feel it, that subtle shift, like the universe turning a page. Somewhere far below, the archive breathes in, drawing new memories into its boundless collection. A broken heart, a song finished at last, the last breath of a fading creature in the woods. Each one settles into the hush, becoming part of the eternal library that keeps Ooh whole. Forgetting in this way becomes an act of balance. Without it, the world would overflow with memory, its every stone and drop of water heavy with recollection. The Candy Kingdom would remember every cracked piece of sugar, every joy and sorrow since its birth. The oceans would tremble beneath the weight of every drowned word. There would be no space for new beginnings. But because the archive exists, life can continue its soft renewal. When the past grows too heavy, it is carried downward into rest. The old becomes foundation for the new, and the world continues to dream. There are theories, quiet, unspoken ones, that the cosmic entities themselves may have shaped the system. That before the first dawn of Ao, when the universe was young and raw, memory itself threatened to consume creation. So the stars built a vessel for it, not a machine, not a god, but a pattern of forgetting, a place where all that was could be gently stored, and where time could move forward unburdened. Perhaps this is what the cosmic owl guards in his nightly flights, not fate, but memory. Perhaps when he visits dreams, he is gathering fragments that have drifted loose, returning them to the archive's shelves. The dreams that change people, the ones that feel heavy and significant, might be moments when he delivers something that was meant to be remembered once more. The night sky of O is full of such exchanges. Each star could be a window into one of the archive's chambers, billions of tiny lights flickering as memories stir. When one fades, it does not vanish. It simply closes its page. When a new one appears, it may be the light of something rediscovered, glowing once again after eons of quiet. And somewhere in that endless starlight, the souls of those long gone rest peacefully, not as ghosts or echoes, but as stories intact, unbroken, and eternal. They are not waiting to be revived nor yearning to return. They are content within the archive's soft glow, existing as part of the great continuity of Oo's dream. If Finn or Jake could see this, they might recognize the pattern. Finn, with his boundless curiosity, would see how every adventure is both a discovery and a remembering. Jake, with his calm acceptance, would nod and say that everything eventually finds its way home. Both of them, in their own ways, already live in harmony with the archive's rhythm, chasing new memories, letting go of old ones, and trusting that nothing meaningful is ever truly lost. And maybe that's what the Eternal Archive is teaching, quietly through the stories of Ooh, that loss is not absence, and memory is not possession. The two dance together, keeping the world balanced between what has been and what is yet to come. So when something disappears a place, a song, a person, it isn't gone. It has simply stepped into the quiet halls of the archive, where time grows still and stories rest until they are ready to be told again. Imagine drifting there for a moment, floating weightlessly through aisles of soft light, hearing the faint heartbeat of all that ever was. Each pulse a whisper of love, a trace of laughter, a sigh of peace. You reach out, and the light brushes your hand like silk, warm, familiar, eternal. Then gently you let go, because that is the way of things in Ooh. To hold, to release, to remember, to forget the endless rhythm that keeps the dream alive. And somewhere deep below the waking world, the archive turns another page. The story continues quietly as it always has. Every world dreams, though not all of them remember. But Ooh remembers everything. Even the wind that sighs through its mountains carries the faint rhythm of history, as if the land itself hums a quiet song to keep the past from fading too quick. When we think of memory, we often picture the mind something small, personal, and fleeting. Yet in Ooh, memory is not contained within any single creature. It seeps through the soil, flows in the rivers, and lingers in the air like the scent of rain. It is an elemental force, woven into the very structure of reality. Every tree, every stone, every drop of water holds a trace of what has been. To live in Ooh is to be surrounded by a world that quietly remembers. You can feel it in the way the ruins hum when the wind passes through them. The way a broken sword still vibrates faintly with the echo of 1,000 battles. Or in the way Marceline can sit in an abandoned city and hum a tune that no one else recalls. Her voice wrapping around memories the world itself has kept alive for her. But then, it is as though the land refuses to let go, even when those who once walked it have turned to dust. The Great Mushroom War might have been the moment that changed everything. It fractured the old world, tearing apart the fragile threads that held memory together. When the war ended, much was lost. Languages, stories, people, and entire ways of life. But even as fire consumed and silence followed, the world beneath was listening. The land absorbed the echoes of what had been, storing them deep within its hidden layers. Perhaps that was the first act of the Eternal Archive, not an intervention, but a reflex. A quiet instinct of the universe to protect what it could from vanishing entirely. What survived after the war was strange and new. Magic rose where science had fallen. The old rules of nature bent under the weight of what the world remembered. Mutations bloomed like dreams turned real, and ancient sorcery began to seep back into the cracks. It was as if the earth itself, scarred and weary, began to remember what it once was, not just a world of reason and machines, but a place of wonder, alive with the pulsing memory of creation. That's the hidden truth of Ooh. It is a world built from remembrance, a patchwork of histories layered one atop another. The Candy Kingdom rests on the bones of a forgotten civilization. The Ice Kingdom rises from the ruins of frozen cities once touched by humanity. Every mountain, every valley, every magical artifact is a record not written in words but in essence. And if you look closely enough, you can feel those records pulse beneath the surface. When Finn picks up a sword, it isn't just a weapon. It's a memory, carried through time, reshaped again and again. The demon blood sword, the grass sword, the Finn sword, each carries the weight of those who held it before, blending their spirits and choices into something alive. The sword remembers its battles. It remembers the hands that gripped it. It remembers even when no one else does. That is the magic of memory. In Ooh, it never truly fades. It only transforms. Some memories are gentle, like lullabies carried by the breeze. Others are heavy, like ghosts that refuse to rest. The Ice King's crown is perhaps the purest embodiment of this truth. It is an artifact born from memory itself, a vessel containing the ancient sorrow of its maker, the desperate longing of a man who loved deeply and lost everything. When Simon placed it upon his head, he didn't just inherit magic. He inherited memory. The crown remembers its origins, and that remembrance echoes through Simon's mind, reshaping him into the Ice King. To wear it is to drown in the memories of another being, to feel time collapse until all that's left is a haunting melody of what once was. And yet, even that pain serves a purpose, because the crown's memory ensures that Simon and the love he felt can never be erased. Even if the man himself forgets, the world still holds his story. The snow still hums his sorrow. The ice still glows faintly with his devotion. Ooh holds on to what matters. It hides its grief within beauty, its history within magic. Every ruin, every relic, every lingering melody is a reminder that the past does not die. It only changes shape. The Eternal Archive may keep the forgotten safe, but the world above still glows with its reflections, faint lights of remembrance shining through time's fog. If you walk far enough across the empty plains, you might find the remnants of the old world. A rusted sign, a cracked screen, a building swallowed by vines. To most, these are relics, nothing more than curiosities. But if you close your eyes and listen, truly listen, you might feel the faint pulse of memory within them. The metal hums with the energy of what it once was, a home, a dream, a heartbeat of civilization. Because memory in Ooh is never silent. It just waits to be heard again. Sometimes, memory takes the shape of dreams quiet, luminous pockets of remembrance that rise up in sleep like bubbles from the depths. Finn has seen them without realizing it. The strange visions that come to him when he closes his eyes, the forgotten faces that feel both familiar and distant. The landscapes that shimmer just beyond waking, they are not random. They are the archive whispering through his dreams. When Finn dreams of the pre-war world, when he feels the ache of people long gone, that isn't imagination. It's the collective memory of Ooh surfacing, brushing against his consciousness, like the tide against the shore. The Eternal Archive doesn't only store memory, it lends it. It lets the living remember the dead for a while, so the story can continue. Jake once said that everything in the universe is connected, that even when something disappears, it's still part of the same cosmic spaghetti. Maybe that's closer to the truth than he knew. Because in Ooh, connection is memory, and memory is magic. When something is remembered, it is bound again to the living world, given form and substance by the act of being known. That's why spells in OO so often depend on names and stories. To summon a creature, to heal a wound, to break a curse, one must first remember the truth of what a thing is. Memory defines existence. Forgetting unravels it. The magical fabric of reality responds to remembrance like a harp string to a gentle touch. Even the most mysterious places, like the nightosphere, the spirit tower, seem to exist on the boundary between what is remembered and what is forgotten. They shimmer in and out of existence because their memory is unstable, kept alive only by those who still recall their names. Think of the way entire islands or creatures vanish from OO when no one speaks of them for too long. They don't die. They're not destroyed. They simply slip back into the archive, into the quiet corners of existence where lost stories rest. And if someone happens to remember them again, even by accident, they begin to reappear. It's as though the universe keeps everything filed away, waiting for a thought, a name, a whisper to call it back into being. There's a haunting beauty in that idea, that nothing is ever truly gone, only misplaced in the library of the cosmos. The people who lived before the war, their laughter and mistakes, their art and grief all still echo through the folds of time, somewhere beneath the surface. OO is built upon the layered sediment of memory. Every generation adds its own chapter, unaware that the pages beneath still breathe. And sometimes, when the right person stumbles into the right place, say Finn in a forgotten ruin, or Marceline in a half-sunken city those old memories stir, they reach upward like roots sensing sunlight, seeking to be known again. That's why OO feels alive even when it's silent. The wind through an abandoned castle isn't just sound. It's the residue of memory, brushing against the edges of the present. The whisper of the past trying to speak again. And what's most intriguing, what makes this whole theory so quietly powerful, is that memory itself seems to have will. Not consciousness in the way people understand it, but a kind of gravity, a pull. Things remembered draw themselves toward those who can remember them. They gather around sensitive minds, curious hearts, heroes, dreamers, musicians, people who live with one foot in the world of the seen and one in the world of the felt. It's no coincidence that Finn, Jake, and Marceline often find themselves drawn to places heavy with history. The Eternal Archive uses them gently to bring its records back into motion. Through them, memory becomes story again. And through story, the world heals. Because that's what OO's memory truly is, not a cold database of facts, but a living, breathing continuum of emotion, meaning, and connection. The kind of memory that can make you cry over a song you don't remember learning, or feel nostalgia for a place you've never been. It's magic that flows through the heart instead of the mind. When people of OO forget, they don't simply lose, they give something back. Their forgotten loves, fears, and moments drift into the archive like glowing seeds. And one day, those seeds take root again, maybe in a melody Marceline hums absent-mindedly, or in a story BMO tells to itself, or in a dream Finn can't quite explain. Memory in OO is a cycle. Not linear, not logical, but organic. The past doesn't stay behind. It breathes through the present and shapes the future. Every forgotten thing is just waiting to be remembered again. And maybe that's why OO has survived so long after the world should have ended. It refuses to forget itself. Even when civilizations crumble and stars fade, something deep beneath it all keeps whispering, remember, remember, remember. The memory of worlds never sleeps. It dreams endlessly, patiently waiting for someone brave enough to listen. And if the memory of worlds never sleeps, then OO itself must be dreaming. Every field, every crumbling tower, every hidden cave hums softly with that dream, the slow exhale of something ancient remembering its. When Finn walks through the ruins of old cities, he sometimes feels it in the soles of his feet, a low vibration, like a heart beating beneath the ground. It's not his imagination. It's the rhythm of the archive, quietly pulsing through the soil. There are theories whispered among wizards and scholars that before the Mushroom War, the world itself had a kind of consciousness, an immense, interconnected awareness born from the memories of every living thing. They called it the collective dream. When the war came, that dream was shattered, its memories scattered across time like glass dust in a shaft of light. But even broken, it endured. Each fragment found its way into its rivers, its stones, its creatures, its stories. That is why, even now, so long after the fall of the old world, echoes of that lost age still surface, sometimes in relics, sometimes in technology, and sometimes in people who carry traces of it deep inside them. Like Susan, who walks between forgotten genes and buried histories, or Simon Petrikov, whose tragedy is a monument to memory itself, a man who remembers too much, trapped in the looping echoes of a past he cannot escape. Simon's transformation into the Ice King wasn't just the curse of a crown. It was the weight of ancient memory pressing down on one fragile human mind. The crown didn't simply control him, it filled him. It made him a vessel for stories older than his own life, a walking archive of sorrow and love, of a world long gone. His madness wasn't the absence of reason. It was an overabundance of memory. Too many voices, too many ghosts, all demanding to be remembered through him. And in that sense, he is perhaps the purest manifestation of the Eternal Archive. Not an observer, but a carrier. A man whose mind became the meeting place of thousands of forgotten dreams. Through him, the archive found a way to speak, though in broken, jumbled sentences, in songs that sound like nonsense, in tears that never dry. Marceline, too, embodies this living memory. Her long life stretches across eras. She remembers the smell of burning cities, the taste of ash in the air, the silence that followed the end of the old world. Her songs are not just laments, they are records. Each note carries emotion from centuries past, encoded not in ink or stone, but in feeling. When she sings, the world listens because deep down it recognizes itself in her voice. It's why her music can stir even the coldest heart, because it reminds them of something they once knew. A warmth from a time they can't quite place, a friend they've forgotten, a home that never really existed, except in the shared memory of being alive. In the quiet corners of Ooh, where no one goes anymore, there are signs of this great remembering. Ruins that rebuild themselves, ghost towns that flicker back into being for a single night, mirrors that show faces from other centuries. The fabric of the world occasionally hiccups, as if it's trying to bring something back, to fix a missing page in its history. Even the Candy Kingdom, with its colorful sweetness and childlike peace, carries remnants of forgotten worlds. Bubblegum herself is made of memory, molded from the residue of old science and new magic. She remembers through knowledge, through invention, through the careful reconstruction of order. Her archives, her labs, her endless curiosity, they are echoes of humanity's ancient desire to preserve what it once knew. Yet, in her deepest moments of silence, when she sits alone beneath the stars, she must feel it too, that faint ache of recognition, that awareness that some memories live outside of books and data, that no amount of cataloging can ever capture the pulse of something once felt. The Eternal Archive isn't in her libraries, it's in her heart. And maybe that's what connects all these souls, Finn, Jake, Marceline, Simon, Bubblegum. They are not just heroes or friends or survivors. They are fragments of remembrance given shape. The archive dreaming itself awake through them, using their lives as stories to keep the world from dissolving into nothing. Every time Finn saves a village, every time Marceline plays her bass, every time Simon whispers a name from long ago, the archive stirs. A page turns. A forgotten light flickers back on. The memory of worlds continues. Because even in a world born from ruin, memory refuses to fade. It folds itself into everything, into laughter, into pain, into the rhythm of the rain. It's in the way the sun glints off the shattered glass of old skyscrapers. In the way children in Ooh play without knowing their games echo those of the humans who came before. The memory of worlds doesn't need to be understood to be felt. It lives in the silence between heartbeats, in the way the air hums just before dawn, in the tremor of something eternal that never stops remembering itself. And as the night deepens, we might start to see Ooh not as a place of aftermath, but as a place of remembrance, the living body of memory itself, dreaming endlessly beneath the stars. If you listen closely, you can almost hear it, that soft hum beneath the world. It isn't the wind, or the trees, or the faint electrical sigh of ancient machines. It's something older. The quiet murmur of time remembering itself. Each grain of sand, each fragment of bone, each starlit drop of water carries traces of what has been, and all of it somehow still speaks gently, patiently, to anyone who knows how to listen. Finn once said that he doesn't really think about the past much, that he's more about what's happening now. But maybe that's exactly why the past finds him. The archive doesn't seek scholars or sages. It looks for hearts that are open, people who act without needing to understand why. When Finn picks up a broken sword or helps a forgotten creature, he unknowingly restores a piece of Ooh's memory. Through kindness, he remembers what the world used to be. The memory of worlds isn't just history, it's empathy. Every being in Ooh, no matter how strange, carries a spark of this shared remembrance. Even the smallest creatures, the snails that wave from hidden corners, the moss that glows faintly at night, are part of the same quiet record. They've witnessed the rise and fall of ages, and they whisper their stories, not in words, but in feeling. Jake, ever the philosopher of the mundane, once described memory as a stretch. He said it's like when your body remembers how to do something before your mind catches up. Maybe that's the truest form of remembrance in Ooh, not facts or archives, but instincts. The way a tree grows toward the sun without being told. The way light refracts through shattered glass to make beauty out of ruin. Memory here is nature's rhythm, the world rehearsing its own survival. And sometimes the universe seems to test how strong that rhythm is. It erases, resets, buries. Kingdoms vanish overnight. Languages disappear. Whole species fade from the map. Yet somewhere beneath that loss, something glows faint, unyielding. A single melody, a symbol, a pulse. It's the archive's promise that nothing ever ends completely. Some believe that this memory lies not just in space, but in the folds of time itself. When we dream, when we feel déjà vu, when something ancient stirs in the corner of our perception, we are brushing against the seams of the eternal archive. It is not far away. It is here, woven into the rhythm of every moment. Think of the episodes where time bends, where Finn meets his past selves, or glimpses alternate futures. Those moments aren't just temporal anomalies. They are points where memory overlaps, where the world remembers all its versions at once. The universe isn't linear, it's recursive, folding back on itself like a song replaying in a new key. Each loop is another attempt at understanding, at refining what it means to exist. In that way, the memory of worlds isn't a passive archive, it's an active participant. It learns, it evolves, it dreams in cycles. Perhaps every great shift in ooh from the fall of humans to the rise of candy people, from the rule of chaos to the quiet of peace, is the archive dreaming a new chapter, trying to balance what was lost with what might yet be found. And yet there's a melancholy to it, because with every dream, something must be forgotten to make room for what's next. Even the archive, infinite as it may seem, needs to breathe to let go. That's why some memories fade deeper than others. Not all are meant to return. Some are too heavy, too bright, too sharp to touch again. They sink to the deepest shelves of the archive, where even the stars dare not look. But they are not gone. Not truly. They linger as impressions, feelings that ripple through creation. When a sunset feels familiar, or a stranger's voice echoes in your chest, that's one of those deep memories brushing against you. The archive lending you a fragment, a heartbeat from another life, another world. Marceline once said that she sometimes dreams of people she's never met, yet wakes up crying for them. That's the archive, too, the emotional residue of forgotten lives rising through her. She doesn't need to know their names. Her music carries them forward, turns their pain into beauty, their silence into song. Through her, the world remembers. Maybe that's the point of all of it, that memory, for all its vastness, is meant to be shared. Not held in vaults or stone, but passed through love, through art, through kindness. Ooh endures not because it keeps its memories perfectly intact, but because it keeps feeling them. Every act of compassion, every laugh between friends, every gentle moment under the stars is a new way for the universe to remember itself. And so the memory of worlds continues to hum, softly and eternally, not as a record of what once was, but as a song that never truly ends, a melody made from everything that ever lived, still playing beneath the breath of time. Because in ooh, nothing is ever truly forgotten. It is only waiting patient, luminous, and infinite for someone, somewhere, to remember it once more. And in that remembering, the world continues to dream. In the quiet places of ooh, there are corners where reality softens, where the air hums with that subtle, ancient awareness we've come to recognize. Not dangerous, not kind, simply vast. And in those corners something stirs, not creatures of flesh, nor spirits bound by form. They are keepers of silence, gatherers of memory, the unseen custodians of everything that once was. Some call them memory spirits, others call them the whisper clerks. But most never see them at all because they do not wish to be seen. They dwell between the folds of perception, tending to the spaces where stories slip away. When an object vanishes from ooh, a forgotten toy, a letter swallowed by the wind, a name erased from a gravestone, it is they who retrieve it, not to hoard it, but to gently reshelve it in the invisible corridors of the archive. Ancient wizards spoke of them as if describing a dream. They said the librarians move like reflections on water, their shapes forming from dust motes and candlelight. They do not walk or fly, but drift, guided by memory's gravity. Their touch feels like the sudden chill of remembering something you'd rather forget. Their voices, if you can call them that, are the echoes of words once spoken with love. It's said that they were born from the first great forgetting the moment, when the pre-war world finally dissolved into myth. As humanity faded, its memories sought caretakers. And from that need, the librarians emerged beings woven from empathy and recollection. They are not gods, not ghosts, but something older than both, the instinct to preserve meaning. Every forgotten soul, every faded memory, finds its way to them eventually. They sort it, study it, store it. Some memories are heavy with sorrow, and they cradle those gently like fragile glass. Others are bright and chaotic, bursting with laughter, and they tuck them safely away so their energy doesn't spill into the waking world. The archive must remain balanced. Too much of one emotion, and reality itself starts to ripple. On rare occasions, when the balance tips too far, one of the librarians crosses into the living realm. You might have seen one, if you've ever glimpsed a strange figure watching quietly from a distance, only to vanish when you blink, or if you felt that fleeting sense of déjà vu so strong it almost hurts the feeling that something old is looking through you, searching for what it once was. Marceline once told a story of a night in the desert, where she followed a trail of flickering lights that led to a half-buried library of stone. Inside she heard whispers, not in words, but in sensations, laughter, grief, warmth, loss. She said she saw silhouettes moving through the shelves, their forms translucent, their faces blurred like dreams. They did not notice her at first, but when one turned, she saw that its eyes shimmered, with entire lifetimes scenes shifting like reflections across water. She said they weren't frightening, just deeply sad. They seemed to carry the weight of unspoken things, and when she touched one of the shelves, the memories poured into her like a melody, leaving her trembling with forgotten emotions, love that wasn't hers, grief that belonged to someone long gone. When she left, the librarians let her go without a sound, as if understanding that she now carried a small piece of the archive within her. Maybe that's what they do, share fragments when the world is ready. Maybe they are the bridge between forgetting and remembering. They don't force the past upon the present, but guide it gently, letting it bloom when the time is right. Finn has probably met them too, though he wouldn't know it. Sometimes in his dreams there are figures who lead him toward doors he's never opened before. They don't speak, but they show him moments from lives he never lived, glimpses of the old world, flashes of faces filled with both terror and tenderness. He wakes up not frightened but peaceful, as if he's just helped someone find their way home. That might be their true purpose, to help memories rest. Not to lock them away, but to let them breathe. In the archive, nothing is static. Every memory has its season. Some are meant to rise, others to sleep. And the librarians, patient and silent, guide that rhythm, ensuring that the dream of ooh remains whole. If you could follow them deep into their hidden sanctums, you might find that the archive isn't a place at all, but a feeling, a sensation of being surrounded by every story ever told, drifting like dust in sunlight, waiting to be remembered. And in that endless space, the librarians drift quietly, their every motion a hymn to the act of remembering, gentle, endless, unseen. If one were to wander far enough through past the lands of candy and crystal, through forests where the trees seem to breathe, there might come a point where the path begins to blur. The world softens there like a watercolor left in the rain. The horizon bends and sounds become muffled, as if the air itself is thick with thought. That is where the realm of the librarians begins, a boundary not marked by walls or gates, but by forgetting. Those who stumble too deep into it rarely notice the transition. They might simply stop remembering why they came. Their names fade from their own lips, their stories unravel like thread in water, not out of malice, but by the quiet law of the place. To enter the archive, you must let go of the noise that binds you to the present. Only then can the world of memories open itself to you. In that space, time flows differently. The stars above move slowly, their trails weaving like script across the sky. There are shelves made of light and corridors made of sound, every surface humming softly with the echoes of what once was. It's said that the librarians drift through these halls endlessly, their movements synchronized with the rhythm of time's breath. Some carry lanterns that glow not with flame, but with memory, each light a soul, each flicker a life once lived. There are smaller beings, too, shaped like sparks or floating seeds, who flutter about the shelves. They are the archive's assistants, if such a word applies, little motes of consciousness that help the librarians restore what has been lost. When a dream fades too soon, or when a memory is taken before its time, these tiny beings guide it home, weaving it into the great tapestry before it can disappear completely. Scholars of OO once believed that these creatures were just metaphors, personifications of forgetting, born from superstition. But the longer you study the strange consistency of O's reality, the more it begins to make sense. So many things vanish in that world without truly ending. Islands drift away and return. Whole beings dissolve into air and then reappear centuries later. There is an underlying intelligence to that cycle. Something or someone is keeping track. Maybe that's why places like the Time Room or the Hall of Egress exist anomalies in reality, like open doors left ajar by the librarians, pockets where memory and perception overlap, allowing the living to accidentally brush against the workings of the archive. To Finn, those experiences felt like lessons, as if something was teaching him through trial and return, reminding him, again and again, that understanding comes not from knowing, but from remembering. Even BMO, in its curious innocence, seems to understand a little of this. It speaks often of stories, of saving and replaying moments. For BMO, memory is a form of play, an act of preservation through joy. And maybe in its own way, it is a librarian too. A tiny vessel of the archive disguised as a friend, recording and retelling the heart of OO so that nothing important is ever truly gone. Sometimes, late at night, BMO will sit in the dark and project tiny films on the wall, memories of old adventures, captured laughter, moments that make the room feel alive. If you look closely, you might notice shapes in the shadows, faint silhouettes watching quietly, as if the librarians themselves are there, listening, grateful for the act of remembrance, because that's all they've ever wanted, for the world to keep telling its story. There's an old legend told by a handful of adventurers of a cave beneath the land of the dead, where the walls are covered in living script. They say it's the heart of the archive, and that every symbol on those walls represents a soul's journey, looping endlessly until the librarians deem it complete. Touch one, and you might see flashes of another life, a child chasing fireflies, a soldier laying down his sword, a mother whispering a lullaby. Each scene passes like a breath, each one precious and unbearably fleeting. And perhaps, if you listen long enough, you can hear the librarians themselves humming softly. It's not a song you can hum back, not a sound meant for ears. It's the vibration of existence itself, the resonance of everything that ever was, blending into one eternal tone. That hum runs beneath the surface of OO. It threads through dreams, through magic, through every quiet moment of déjà vu. When Finn pauses and feels the world's stillness after a long battle, when Marceline's voice lingers in the air after the last note fades, that's the hum, the archive's breath, carried into the waking world. And maybe that's the greatest mystery of all, that these unseen librarians, with their endless patience and invisible grace, are not somewhere else entirely. They're right here, folded into the rhythm of every memory we keep, every story we share, every love we carry forward. They are the dream of remembrance itself, watching over OO, not as gods of power, but as caretakers of meaning, quiet, eternal, unseen. Some say the librarians were once mortal beings who loved stories so deeply that the universe allowed them to become part of one. Not as heroes, not as villains, but as keepers. When they died, their souls didn't fade or rise. They simply stayed, lingering in the space between thought and dream. Over eons, their identities blurred, names replaced by purpose, until all that remained was the instinct to protect what would otherwise be lost. Perhaps that's why they feel so human in their gentleness. They don't command or judge, they tend. They linger over each memory with the same reverence one might show a fragile bird. In their presence, the noise of time quiets wars, endings, catastrophes all fade into soft echoes, because to them these are just chapters in a long, ongoing story. Nothing is ever truly tragic when viewed from eternity. It's simply changing form. When the first wizard comet crossed Oo's skies, a few powerful magicians claimed to have glimpsed shapes within the tail faces peering through the shimmering dust. They believed these were librarians traveling between worlds, ferrying ancient memories from one cycle of existence to the next. If true, that would mean the archive stretches far beyond Oo, that every world, every reality, has its own librarians, interconnected through the luminous corridors of remembrance. In this way, the librarians are not guardians of one place, but caretakers of all that is remembered anywhere. When a thought is born on one world, it leaves an imprint on another. When someone dreams on Earth, perhaps a librarian in Oo stirs, sensing the echo. Memory doesn't respect boundaries. It is light crossing dimensions, searching endlessly for meaning. And Oo, in its dreamlike strangeness, seems to stand right on that boundary, a meeting point of the forgotten and the reborn. The librarians are drawn to it naturally, as moths to a lantern. So many stories have ended and begun there, so many ages washed away. The land is thick with remembrance, and it calls to them like the hum of an old song that never stops playing. There are stories, quiet ones, told mostly by travelers and dreamers, of people meeting a librarian in disguise, a gentle stranger by the roadside, a musician who knows a song that shouldn't exist anymore, a child who speaks in the voice of someone long gone. They appear only for a moment, always when someone is on the verge of forgetting something important, and then, once the memory returns, they vanish, leaving behind only stillness. One account tells of a hermit who lived near the edge of the Ice Kingdom. He claimed that during a blizzard, a woman in white visited him, her face soft and kind, her eyes filled with light that seemed to move. She asked him a single question: "What will you remember when the cold comes?" He couldn't answer. By morning, she was gone, and his house had been covered in symbols he couldn't read. He said they glowed faintly at night, humming a lullaby he didn't know he knew. Was she a librarian, testing his heart? Or perhaps reminding him that memory is the fire that keeps warmth alive in a world made of snow? No one can say. But the tale feels right. It carries that quiet resonance all true stories share, the kind that sits with you long after it's told. If the librarians are the stewards of forgotten things, then maybe each of us meets them in small ways. When we find an old object that stirs emotion without reason, when a melody rises in our mind and we don't know where we've heard it, when we walk into a place we've never been and feel as though we're returning home. Those moments are the touch of the unseen, the gentle reminder that the archive never stops reaching out. There's comfort in that thought. To know that somewhere, in the endless quiet beyond what we can see, there are beings who care enough to remember, who make sure that nothing, not even the smallest laugh or fleeting tear, ever truly disappears. Maybe that's why Oo feels so alive in its silence. It's being watched over, not by rulers or gods, but by librarians who love it enough to keep its story going. Every dream, every song, every soft heartbeat adds another page to the archive. And the librarians, in their patient devotion, ensure the pages never tear. So when the stars shimmer over the plains of Ooh, maybe what we're really seeing isn't just starlight. Maybe it's the reflection of those unseen watchers, quietly cataloging the light itself, the memory of fire burning across the endless dark. And perhaps as we sleep, they drift close, turning the fragile pages of our dreams, careful not to wake us as they copy down another memory, another small moment of existence to preserve for the universe. Not as record keepers of power, but as caretakers of tenderness. Not to control, but to remember. That is their sacred duty and their endless peace. Some legends go even deeper, whispering that the librarians were the first to understand that memory itself is a kind of magic, not a spell cast by words or runes, but by feeling. When someone remembers something with love or sorrow or longing, it becomes charged with a quiet energy, the kind that seeps through the boundaries of time. The librarians learn to listen to that current, to read the emotional echoes written into every forgotten thing. To them, a tear is a paragraph, a sigh, a sentence, and a silence, an entire book. In the older corners of Ooh's myth, there are drawings that resemble constellations, shaped like hands, open palms reaching toward each other across the sky. The people of the Candy Kingdom used to call them the shelves. They believed that when a star fades, it isn't gone. It's been moved, gently placed by the librarians, onto the shelf of night. A quiet symbol that even the cosmos is being filed away carefully, so nothing of beauty is ever lost. Perhaps that's why certain dreams feel like libraries. Long corridors, endless aisles, whispers brushing your ear but never forming clear words. Maybe in sleep we visit the archive unknowingly, our minds brushing against the memories of others. And perhaps when we wake, the fragments that cling to us, those odd images, those emotions that don't belong to us, are just pieces of what the librarians allowed us to glimpse, borrowed pages from an infinite book. Imagine then how Ooh must look to them from afar, a world still mending from the mushroom war, its scars glowing softly beneath fields and forests. To the librarians, this land is a living volume, one whose pages have been torn and rewritten countless times. Yet instead of despairing, they continue to tend to it, sealing each wound with memory, turning every broken fragment into something worth remembering. Even forgotten gods and discarded artifacts find their way into their care. The melted relics of old technology, the faded prayers to deities no longer named, all of it, is gathered in silence. Nothing is too strange, too small, or too broken to be remembered. To the librarians, all things are sacred because they were once loved, and that, they believe, is reason enough to preserve them. There's a strange comfort in that, to think that even our mistakes, our lost moments, might still exist somewhere, held with patience by hands that will never judge us. Perhaps the librarians aren't so far away after all. Maybe they live within every act of remembrance. Every time we recall something that once mattered, every time we whisper a name we thought we'd forgotten, we help them in their endless work. Maybe that's what keeps the archive alive, not some distant cosmic magic, but us, our yearning to remember, our refusal to let go entirely. In this sense, every heart is a small extension of that eternal library. Every person walking across Ooh carries within them countless shelves of forgotten days waiting to be rediscovered. When you think about it, that's what stories are. Little acts of remembrance. Each time we tell one, we give the librarians more to work with, another page to add, another spark to keep the archive alight. And in the soft rhythm of storytelling, in the hush between words, it's almost as if we can hear them turning pages in the dark, ensuring the light of memory never truly fades. And maybe, if you were to listen very closely right now in the gentle hum of the night, you might hear it too. The faint rustle of unseen pages being turned somewhere beyond sight, not to startle you, not to remind you of loss, but to comfort you, to remind you that nothing, not even the quiet moments of your own life, ever truly disappears. They're simply being archived. Somewhere out there, in that vast, dreamlike expanse that drifts between stars, the librarians of the unseen are still at work, cataloging laughter, storing the sound of rain, preserving every heartbeat, every final word, every wish whispered in sleep. And when the time comes for even this age to fade, they'll be there too, ready to gently close the book of Ooh and place it, with infinite care, among the shelves of eternity. But for now, they continue their silent duty, unseen, unfelt, yet ever present. The quiet stewards of what was, what is, and what will one day be, remembered again. Because the archive, like memory itself, never truly ends, it only waits for someone to remember. And maybe tonight, as we drift deeper into the soft folds of sleep, we become part of it, two dreamers wandering the endless aisles, our footsteps leaving little echoes of warmth among the shelves of the unseen. Good night, librarians. Keep the stories safe until we wake. If you are, just let yourself sink a little deeper into the quiet. The world outside can wait. It always can. Tonight, we wander into a gentler kind of mystery, one that lies close to the heart of everything we've explored so far. This part of our story is called Finn, Jake, and the Fading of the Self. Because in a world where memories can vanish into an eternal archive, what happens to the ones who live on the edge of forgetting? What happens to heroes when their stories become stillness? For most of Ooh's history, Finn and Jake have stood as its rhythm, its heartbeat, its laughter, its constant thread through the chaos. From saving princesses to unraveling the mysteries of time itself, they've shaped their world in ways that few others could. Yet beneath all the color and adventure, there's a quiet truth running through their journey, one that grows clearer the closer we look. It's the truth of fading. Not fading in a tragic sense, not like something lost or erased, but rather a gentle dissolving the way snow melts into water, or the way a melody lingers after the final note is ended. Finn and Jake's story is one of becoming less distinct, not because they're forgotten, but because they've become part of everything. When we look back at the later moments of their lives, the dreamlike wanderings of Finn the human and Jake the dog, we see two souls learning how to let go of themselves. They're not just heroes anymore. They're witnesses to the cycle of existence. In Together Again, when Finn journeys beyond life to find Jake, there's a sense that they've both already stepped beyond individuality. Jake's peace in that realm, his willingness to move on, is something deep, almost cosmic. It's as though he's already heard the call of the archive. He speaks of unity, of flowing with everything, of becoming one with all that exists. His joy in letting go feels like the purest form of remembrance, not clinging to what was, but honoring it by returning to it completely. And Finn, restless and still learning, becomes the mirror for us, the part of the self that resists fading, that wants to keep shape and story and meaning. The beauty of the reunion is not just in love or nostalgia. It's in that delicate understanding between them. Jake is ready to dissolve into the great beyond, not to vanish, but to merge. Finn, still holding on, has to feel that loss, has to confront what it means to release identity itself. The archive, in its quiet, infinite patience, waits for that moment not to erase them, but to receive them. In many ways, the story of Finn and Jake reflects the oldest truth of Uku, that the self is a temporary shape taken by memory. Every hero, every kingdom, every blade of grass is a memory-wearing form. And when that form fades, the memory simply flows back into the archive, ready to be remembered again, somewhere, somehow. If we think of the librarians as caretakers of what's forgotten, then Finn and Jake are something else entirely, participants in the process. They live the fading. Each adventure, each goodbye, each moment of laughter is another line in the great record. But unlike the ancient archivists, they do not stand apart from life. They move through it, feeling every joy, every grief, every confusion that comes with being alive. And perhaps that's why their story feels so deeply human, even in a world of magic and absurdity. We recognize ourselves in their impermanence. We understand that pull to hold on and to let go. The way Jake's calm acceptance meets Finn's restless search speaks to something ancient inside all of us. Because to fade is not to end. To fade is to return. When we rewatch their story and when we remember their laughter echoing through the tree fort or their quiet talks under the stars, we become part of that return. We're remembering the memory of remembering a cycle that the archive itself would cherish. Ooh doesn't mourn them because Ooh doesn't forget. The land itself hums with their essence. Their footprints linger in the grass, their laughter in the breeze. Even when the tree fort stands empty, the air there feels warm, as if the space still holds a quiet gratitude for the ones who once called it home. The fading of the self isn't something to fear, then. It's something to understand. It's the universe whispering, "Thank you for your story, now rest." And in that resting, something remarkable happens. New stories begin to grow from the quiet. But before we drift there, before we step further into that mystery, let's stay a little longer with Finn and Jake, two beings whose friendship became a kind of eternal echo, rippling softly through all of O. Their story isn't just about what they did, but about what they became. And in the quiet glow of that truth, we begin to see the meaning of fading not as loss, but as a kind of sacred remembering. Because every fading is just another way the archive breathes. There's a tenderness to the way Finn and Jake's story unwinds, not with a grand finale, but with a soft sigh, like the end of a long summer day. You can almost feel it in the way light changes in the land of O, shifting from gold to lavender, as if the world itself is dimming the lamps so their memory can settle peacefully. Their journey was never meant to end with triumph, but with understanding. Finn's path especially carries that quiet ache of self-realization. From a boy desperate to be a hero to a man who learns that even heroes must rest, it's a journey through layers of identity. Each adventure peeled away another mask, another definition of who he thought he was supposed to be. The warrior, the savior, the chosen one. Until at last, what remained was just Finn, the soul beneath the name, standing quietly in the mirror of eternity. Jake, on the other hand, seemed to understand impermanence instinctively. From the beginning, his ease with life, his stretching, his laughter, his willingness to go with the flow hinted at a deep connection to that greater rhythm. While Finn often wrestled with meaning, Jake seemed to be meaning without needing to name it. Maybe that's why he was so peaceful in death. To him, existence was like a nap between dreams never truly ending, just shifting states. There's a beauty in how they balance each other. Finn, the restless pulse of becoming. Jake, the still breath of acceptance. Together they form something whole, a single story written in two voices, teaching us that both the striving and the surrender are part of the same melody. Neither is wrong. Both are sacred. When Finn finds Jake in that quiet afterlife, the endless meadow of blue and white, we see how gently time can hold those who have lived fully. The place isn't heaven in the traditional sense. It's more like the archive's garden, where memories rest in the warmth of understanding before drifting back into the great sea of everything. And in that tranquil space, we see what it means to truly be remembered, not by others, but by existence itself. Jake's words to Finn feel like echoes of the librarian's wisdom. He speaks of trust, of letting the universe carry you, of becoming part of the flow instead of fighting it. It's not about forgetting the self, but about releasing the need to be separate from the whole, to dissolve into the archive's current with love rather than fear. And Finn listens, though his heart still trembles with attachment. He isn't ready to fade, and that's okay. The archive doesn't rush anyone. It waits. It understands that identity clings to itself like morning dew to grass. In time, it will fall naturally back into the earth. For now, the lesson is simply to realize that fading isn't a punishment, but a return to unity. If we look closely, we can see how the show itself seems to mirror this process. The colors soften, the stories slow down. Even the music becomes quieter, almost like a lullaby for Ooh. It's as though the world is preparing itself and us for the truth that everything we love eventually becomes something else, that the end of one form is just the continuation of another. Perhaps that's why Together Again feels both joyful and heartbreaking. It's the moment the story gently folds into itself like pages closing around a final word that was never meant to be final at all. Finn and Jake's reunion is a reminder that connection never truly disappears. It only changes its shape. When Jake drifts away at the end, glowing softly, it isn't a goodbye. It's an offering, a trust in the cycle. He becomes one with the river of memory, and Finn, though left behind, carries that peace within him. From that moment on, everything he does, every smile, every quiet act of kindness, feels touched by that understanding. He no longer fights to hold the world in place. He walks with it, allowing the current to move him. In that way, Finn becomes a librarian of his own kind, not of objects or stories, but of feelings. He carries the emotional record of everything he's lived, every love, every loss, every laughter. He keeps them safe, not through possession, but through acceptance, through the gentle act of being present. And maybe that's what the fading of the self really means. Not erasure, not oblivion, but the moment when the boundary between self and world disappears, when you realize that you are, and always have been, part of something vast and remembering. In that way, Finn and Jake's journey isn't about death at all. It's about returning to the flow of remembrance. It's about realizing that the archive doesn't just exist beyond the world. It's within it and within us. As Finn continues on through the quiet years that follow, there's a sense that he begins to live with softer edges. The boy who once leapt into every danger with fists raised now walks slowly, listening more than he speaks. He begins to notice the silence between moments, the pauses where life hums beneath the noise. Those pauses are where Jake's presence lingers most clearly, not as a ghost, not as a memory, but as a warmth in the air, like sunlight after rain. In those silences, Finn feels something larger at work, something like the archive, though he would never call it that. It's in the way the wind rustles through old forests, carrying echoes of laughter that don't quite belong to him. It's in the flicker of light across a sword he no longer needs to swing. The world, he realizes, is full of small reminders that nothing ever really leaves. Everything just changes its shape, waiting for the right kind of attention to reveal it again. He starts to understand what Jake meant when he said he was ready to flow. To flow isn't to forget who you are. It's to remember that you've always been part of the greater story, that the boundaries we build around identity are only temporary, like footprints in sand before the tide returns. The tide doesn't erase, it gathers. And that gathering happens everywhere in Oo. Look closely, and you can see traces of it the way grass grows greener where old ruins once stood, the way the Candy Kingdom hums with laughter that feels older than its people. Even BMO in their innocent wonder seems to remember things they were never told. These are the small ripples of the archive working quietly, returning what's been lived back into the cycle of being. For Finn, that realization becomes peace, not the kind that comes from giving up, but the kind that comes from understanding you don't have to hold everything together, that every friendship, every goodbye, every lost moment has already been safely kept somewhere tended by unseen hands, carried gently forward. Jake's lessons begin to live in him like poetry. When he helps someone, he does it not as a hero, but as a witness. When he laughs, it's not to chase away sadness, but to honor it. In each small act, he learns to keep the world alive, to archive the present through kindness. That's what the fading of the self becomes. Not a loss, but a devotion to the living memory of everything. And maybe, deep down, he understands that one day he'll join Jake fully, not in an afterlife, but in that same eternal current of remembrance. When his time comes, there will be no resistance, no fear, just a quiet smile and the feeling of being carried like a leaf on gentle water. It's strange but comforting to think that even as Finn fades from the physical world, his story continues to ripple outward. Every person he touched becomes a continuation of him. Every creature that remembers his kindness becomes a page in his chapter. The archive doesn't separate him from the world. It allows him to become the world to live on in whispers, in dreams, in the faint glow of the stars over the tree fort. And Jake? Maybe he's there still, stretched across the sky, his laughter mixed with the breeze, not as a ghost, but as the rhythm of joy itself. Perhaps that's what he meant all along, that when we let go, we don't disappear. We expand. The two of them, human and dog, teacher and friend, are no longer two shapes moving through the world. They're threads woven into the great tapestry of Oo. You can feel them in the rustle of the grass, in the rhythm of waves against the shore, in the heartbeat of the land itself. The self fades, yes, but the story remains, endlessly retold by the universe that remembers everything. Even the librarians, somewhere in their infinite archive, must smile when they come across the records of Finn and Jake, not as names in a book, but as feelings in the air, two souls who learned that love is not about holding on, but about returning to everything. Their memory would be kept not as a chronicle of deeds, but as a vibration, a warmth that resonates through every other story ever told. Because in the end, that's what they taught Oo, that nothing truly vanishes, that every act of love, every spark of kindness, becomes part of the eternal memory of existence. The fading of the self isn't a tragedy, but a promise that we will one day join that same song, and that our tune will be heard in the soft hum of the world long after we're gone. And when you listen to the quiet, maybe you can hear it too, that faint, familiar laughter carried on the night wind. Not gone, not forgotten, just flowing. It's the sound of two friends who became one with everything they ever loved. It's the sound of Finn and Jake, still keeping watch in the eternal archive of the heart. Some nights, if you close your eyes and listen long enough, you can almost feel them not as figures, but as sensations. A flicker of courage when you need it most. A soft chuckle when you're taking life too seriously. The quiet reassurance that everything somehow will be all right. That's how Finn and Jake remain in O, not as statues or stories carved in stone, but as emotions that pass gently through the living. They've become the invisible pulse that keeps the world tender. Finn's fading isn't a vanishing. but a slow blending like watercolor meeting water, the boundaries of who he was dissolving into the hues of everything else. When he smiles at the horizon, he isn't saying goodbye to his life. He's greeting it anew. The wind carries his spirit to the trees, to the rivers, to the hidden corners of ooh that still remember the sound of adventure. His heroism no longer needs a sword or a quest. It lives quietly in the way the world continues to heal. And Jake's presence hums beside him, always nearby, though no longer needing form. He has become the ease of the universe itself, the sense that it's all okay, even when things fall apart. In Jake, the archive found its laughter. In Finn, it found its heart. Together, they represent the two sides of remembrance, joy and longing, each necessary, each infinite. Some say that, from time to time, strange ripples appear in the dreamscapes of ooh, a field of gold grass swaying beneath an endless blue, a faint melody drifting through the air, one that makes sleepers smile without knowing why. Those who dream of it wake up lighter, softer, their hearts a little more at peace. Maybe that's the archive's way of sharing their memory, a gentle reminder that love doesn't fade. It becomes the dream we all return to. When we think of the fading of the self, it's easy to imagine emptiness. But Finn and Jake show us that fading is fullness, the moment when everything you've ever been flows back into the world that raised you. It's the quiet reunion between being and being remembered, the end of separation. Their friendship, more than any battle or quest, was the greatest act of preservation. It kept ooh alive in ways the librarians could never fully capture. Love, after all, is the most uncontainable form of memory. It resists even the archive's endless halls. It spills over, radiating through time, binding all living things together. And that's what Finn and Jake became, a bond so vast that it ceased to belong to them alone. In a way, they are the archive now. Every friendship born in ooh, every laugh, every small act of bravery carries a spark of them. The world remembers them not through history, but through feeling. That's the truest form of immortality, when the essence of who you were becomes the instinct for kindness in others. And so as the world drifts onward through new ages and new dreamers, the memory of those two souls hums quietly beneath it all. Their fading was never an end. It was a transformation. They became the silence between waves, the warmth of the fire after the flame, the steady rhythm of stories continuing long after their tellers have gone to rest. If the librarians ever pause in their infinite work, if they ever stop to listen, perhaps they hear it too, that low, gentle laughter echoing somewhere in the distance, a sound that reminds them why they remember, why they archive, why they keep every spark safe. Because in the end, it isn't knowledge that keeps the universe alive. It's affection, the simple act of cherishing. And that's what Finn and Jake gave the world, the knowledge that to love something is to ensure it will never be forgotten. And as night deepens and dreams begin to hum softly into the dark, we might feel them near once more, not as visitors, but as companions, waiting at the edge of our sleep. Their story continues in us, in the way we remember, the way we hope, the way we let go and keep loving anyway. That is the quiet miracle of the fading self. To vanish, yet remain everywhere. To be forgotten by name, but remembered by feeling. To rest at last in the eternal archive of everything that was ever loved. And forgetting is not destruction. It's a quiet weathering, a soft erasure that comes like mist over an old painting. The colors are still there beneath the surface, are faint but enduring. Everything that ever was, from kingdoms to friendships to fleeting sparks of laughter, still exists somewhere in that mist. The world just forgets how to see it. And when the world forgets, strange things begin to happen. Trees start to bloom with unfamiliar shapes. Songs lose their ending. Faces and portraits blur. Magic shifts, becoming gentler, sadder, as if mourning something it can't name. The air feels heavier, like it's holding its breath. You can walk through Ooh on a day like that and feel it, that sense that something once important is missing, though you can't quite say what. It's said that when a story is forgotten by the living, it begins to drift, not into nothingness, but into the archive's waiting hands. The air itself carries the fragments, a name whispered by the wind, a melody hummed by the trees. The librarians of the unseen reach out and collect these echoes, filing them away in their quiet dimension beyond time. To them, forgetting isn't a failure. It's a cycle. Like the tide retreating to reveal the ocean floor, memory must ebb for new stories to rise. But Ooh isn't always gentle with its forgetting. Sometimes it resists. You can see it in the ruins, those crumbling stone places where ancient machines still flicker with half-lucid awareness, the remnants of a civilization that refused to be erased. Even when nature swallowed their cities, the memory of their presence hummed in the metal, in the rhythm of the stars they once charted. Those old lights still blink faintly above Ooh, constellations drawn by minds long vanished, but not truly gone. And yet the living can feel it when the forgetting deepens, when the archive draws too near. It's like standing in a place you know you've been before, but can't remember why. You get the sense that the world is trying to dream something back into being, but the dream keeps slipping away. Some say that's why the sky in Ooh changes its color so often. Pink at dawn, violet at dusk, green during strange hours between sleep and waking. The sky is remembering. There are legends of whole towns that faded overnight, not destroyed, just quietly folded away. The people simply became part of the dream stuff that fuels the archive. In some places, if you listen closely at the edges of abandoned lands, you can hear faint murmurs, a market that no longer exists, a lullaby that drifts through empty streets. The wind carries those fragments, like pages torn from an invisible book. The Candy Kingdom once feared this most of all. To them, forgetting was worse than death. Princess Bubblegum built vast machines to record the histories of Ooh engines of memory that pulse beneath her laboratory, mapping every notable event, every scent, every laughter. But even her careful science couldn't keep the forgetting at bay. The machines began to glitch, to record things that never happen. Whole new memories bloomed out of nowhere, like dreams spilling into the waking world. That's when she realized the archive wasn't a vault. It was alive. Ooh's forgetting isn't loss, it's metamorphosis. The memories don't die, they migrate, reshaping themselves in the unconscious minds of dreamers. A forgotten hero might return as a folktale. A vanished city might reappear as a symbol in someone's dream. The archive doesn't hoard, it recycles. Every memory it absorbs becomes the seed of another. And yet, there's a melancholy in that cycle because forgetting is also how the world keeps moving. If everything were remembered, nothing would ever change. The seasons would stall, the dreams would stagnate, and even time itself would shatter under the weight of too much knowing. Forgetting is Ooh's mercy, the gift of being able to start again. But what happens when the world begins to forget too much? When the balance shifts and the archive grows hungrier than usual? Some whisper that this has already begun. Places once bright with magic now feel hollow, as though they've given too much of themselves to the unseen library. Memories leak faster, names fade quicker. Even the stars seem fewer in number. The old heroes feel it most keenly. Marceline sometimes looks at her reflection and frowns, Not because she's forgotten who she is, but because the world has. The songs she once sang echo fainter each year. Listeners still hum along, but fewer remember her name. It's as though Ooh is gradually setting her free, releasing her story back into the flow of time. She doesn't fight it. She just hums softly and lets the music join the drift. That's the strange piece of the archive's work. It doesn't demand to be remembered. It simply collects patiently until even the act of collecting becomes invisible. And somewhere beyond Ooh's horizon, the world dreams of all it once was, preparing itself to be new again. Sometimes, when the night is quiet enough, you can almost feel that dream happening the moment when the world exhales and releases another piece of itself into the ether. The feeling is soft, like standing at the edge of a lake as mist begins to rise, watching your reflection ripple into fragments. You know it's still there, somewhere beneath the surface, yet it feels unreachable. That's how Ooh forgets through gentle dispersal, through the stillness between one thought and the next. Some creatures, however, notice the change more vividly than others. Magic beings, especially those tied to emotion or song, are more sensitive to the thinning fabric of memory. Peppermint Butler once recorded strange incidents: ghosts appearing in daylight, objects remembering their owners long after they'd passed, shadows whispering names with no bodies attached to them. He wrote that these were signs of an unbalanced remembrance, that Ooh was trying to recall what had already been surrendered to the archive. He called it the reflux of memory, the world's attempt to hold on to itself before drifting too far. In some quiet corner of the land of Ooh, there's said to be a forest where the trees hum faintly, each one tuned to a forgotten frequency. Walk there long enough, and you might begin to remember things that never happened to you. Flashes of lives, not your own. Half-formed feelings, déjà vu so deep it aches. Those who stumble into the forest often emerge changed, speaking in riddles or humming melodies that no one recognizes. The Librarians allow such places to exist, tiny breaches where memory leaks back into the waking world. It's their way of reminding Ooh that forgetting is not the same as absence. Yet there are dangers to remembering too deeply. The mind can fracture under the weight of too many lifetimes. Magic, in particular, can spiral when it clings to what should have faded. The Ice King is perhaps the most tragic example. His crown a relic heavy with memory, whispering ancient echoes through his mind until he lost himself entirely. What if the crown's magic wasn't corrupting him, but trying to preserve something? What if it was fighting the archive, desperate to hold on to the memory of Simon Petrikov, a name the world was already beginning to erase? Maybe that's the cruel irony. To love something deeply is to defy the natural rhythm of forgetting. Love insists on permanence, while the archive insists on release. The two are always in quiet conflict, shaping the fates of those who live in Ooh. You can see that tug-of-war in Finn, too, the way he clings to meaning, to moments, to friendships, even as time pulls them away. He tries to keep everything alive inside him, like a walking museum of joy and sorrow. But eventually, even he must let go. The archive waits for all stories, even the brightest ones. There's an old theory, whispered by magical scholars who no longer exist, that the Great Mushroom War didn't destroy the old world completely. It just pushed it into the archive all at once, an entire civilization archived in a single, blinding instant. The echoes of that moment still pulse beneath Ooh, shaping dreams and memories, feeding the strange blend of technology and magic that defines the land. It explains why ruins hum, why ancient devices awaken, why some people feel nostalgia for an age they never lived. The archive doesn't forget quickly. It remembers in layers like sediment, and the deeper you dig, the more the past seeps through. And perhaps that's why some of Oo's creatures are drawn to forgotten places, dungeons, abandoned kingdoms, silent ruins. They're not just exploring, they're feeling the pull of memory's gravity. Each relic they find, each broken artifact, carries an emotional residue, a faint vibration from what once was. To touch it is to momentarily bridge the distance between the living world and the archive's quiet depths. The magic of forgetting and remembering, it seems, is what keeps Ooh alive. One feeds the other. The living dream, and the archive dreams back. Every time something is lost, the world breathes out. Every time something is remembered, it breathes in. It's a rhythm older than time, one that even the most powerful beings, from Princess Bubblegum to the cosmic owl, must eventually yield to. And when the balance holds, Ooh feels complete. The air hums with gentle equilibrium. Dreams come easily, and even the ghosts seem at peace. But when that balance falters, when the world begins to remember too much, or forgets too fast, the boundaries blur. Nightmares stir. The landscape bends, reshaping itself to fill the void. It's during these times that the librarians step through the veil, silent and unseen, to restore the flow. They don't erase and they don't judge. They simply listen, and in that listening, the world finds rest again. There's a quiet tenderness to the way the librarians work, as if each forgotten fragment they collect still holds a pulse. When they drift through the fading corners of Ooh, the air trembles slightly, like a fabric brushed by unseen hands. They move without sound, but those who are attuned to magic, Marceline, Bubblegum, even the grass wizard, sometimes sense them nearby. It's not a presence that frightens. It's more like the hush that settles before a lullaby. A momentary stillness where the world remembers that everything once had a name. The librarians are said to be drawn to emotional resonance more than physical traces. They appear where memories cling most stubbornly. A ruined house where laughter once filled the halls, a patch of burnt ground where someone once wept, a shoreline where the tide once carried a message written in sand. They gather these lingering feelings the way others might collect seashells, and as they do, the echoes of the past soften, folding gently into the archive's dreamlike currents. When the world forgets, it isn't cruel. It's merciful. Ooh itself is a survivor of countless cycles, wars, transformations, even rebirth through chaos. Its soil remembers. Its rivers carry whispers of what used to be. The forgetting is what keeps it bearable. Imagine if every grief, every failure, every shattered thing still existed in perfect clarity. The world would drown beneath its own sorrow. Instead, Ooh allows itself to dissolve pieces of the past, transforming pain into mystery, into silence, into something the heart can rest against without breaking. Even time behaves differently in the presence of forgetting. Moments begin to blur. Centuries slip past unnoticed. A meadow that once marked a great battle might now bloom with color, the tragedy buried beneath roots and sunlight. The ghosts that linger there don't haunt. They hum softly, as if grateful to fade. Some travelers report a strange calm in such places, a sense of being watched not by spirits, but by memory itself, tender and forgiving. And yet, not everyone welcomes this peace. There are those who fight against it, beings who build monuments, record their names, craft relics meant to outlast time. They fear being lost. They crave permanence. But permanence is heavy, and Ooh's winds are patient. Even stone erodes under the archive's gaze. Even legends blur. In the end, every monument becomes part of the same gentle drift, carried into the archive's endless dream where it will rest beside the smallest forgotten moment, a child's laugh, a single tear, a name once whispered into the dark. When the world forgets, it is not only objects and histories that fade. Emotions themselves begin to lose their edges. Old hatreds soften into melancholy. Love becomes a kind of distant warmth, still present, but untethered from its source. It's as if the archive absorbs the intensity of these feelings and sends them back as faint afterglows, enough to comfort but never overwhelm. That's why ooze nights often feel so full of emotion, even when no one speaks. The air itself remembers what the heart has let go. There's a poetic balance in that. The archive doesn't seek to erase emotion, but to preserve it in a gentler form, one that can drift freely through dreams. That's why some say that when you cry in your sleep, you're not mourning your own losses. You're mourning the world's. The tears are echoes, borrowed from memories that no longer belong to anyone, only to the archive's quiet keeping. In this way, forgetting becomes a form of love, a surrender that allows the past to rest and the present to bloom. When the Candy Kingdom rebuilds after disaster, when Marceline finds a new song after silence, when Finn looks at a scar and smiles instead of hurting, those are all small acts of forgetting. Not the cold kind, but the kind that sets the heart free. And the archive, in its infinite patience, receives it all. Each memory released becomes a faint shimmer within its halls, a glowing dust that drifts endlessly. It's said that if you could ever visit the archive, you'd see the stories of ooze swirling around you like fireflies, fragments of lives, faces, songs, all merging into one vast constellation of remembrance. When the world forgets, it does not lose itself, it merely rearranges its light. What once burned too brightly now glows softly in the distance, guiding new stories to be born. And perhaps that is ooze's greatest secret, the understanding that nothing truly ends. Every forgotten dream is simply waiting to be dreamed again by someone new in another quiet corner of time. And perhaps that is why, even in its most ruined places, ooze never feels entirely hopeless. There is always a sense of quiet renewal beneath the decay, a gentle pulse that suggests something still listening. When the world forgets, it doesn't stop caring. It simply changes the way it remembers. The whisper of wind through empty streets, the way moss curls around the bones of old machines, the shimmer in a puddle after rain. Each is a form of remembrance too subtle for words. Finn once stood on a hillside overlooking the remnants of an old kingdom. The walls had long since collapsed, their colors faded, their banners turned to dust. And yet, as the evening light washed over the ruins, he felt something stir within him, a sadness that wasn't entirely his own. It was as if the place itself remembered its joy, its fear, its laughter, and was sharing a piece of it with him before the night took it back. He didn't understand it at the time, but what he felt was the kindness of forgetting, the soft edge of memory's retreat, leaving beauty in its wake. Ooze forgetting isn't a loss of meaning, it's a redistribution of it. What was once known by one is shared among all. The forgotten becomes the foundation of the living. You can see it in the way forests grow over ruins, and how wildflowers sprout from graves, and how forgotten melodies reappear in the hum of bees or the rhythm of rain. Each act of forgetting nourishes something else, like compost feeding new life. The archive isn't a grave, it's a garden, endlessly replanting what the world has let go. There's a kind of peace in imagining it that every moment we live, every joy and sorrow is a seed. Some seeds take root in memory, others drift toward the archive, where they dissolve into something larger, something shared. Even the smallest gestures, a smile, a song, a glance, are recorded in that infinite garden. They're never lost, just transform. And if the archive is a garden, then perhaps the librarians are its caretakers. Not cold keepers of knowledge, but gentle gardeners, tending to the soil of time. Each forgotten story they collect becomes a bloom in another's dream. Each faded name becomes the scent of nostalgia that drifts through the air on quiet nights. It's why the stars over Ooh sometimes shimmer with unusual warmth, as if they're glowing from within. They're not just lights, they're memories, safely planted in the firmament. When the world forgets too quickly, though, when too much is drawn into the archive at once, even the stars seem to dim. It's said that this is how the age of heroes ended. The world, weary and full, needed rest. It forgot its champions not out of cruelty, but out of love, because to remember forever would have been too heavy a burden. The forgetting was a lullaby, sung to the world by itself. Somewhere, perhaps beyond time entirely, those heroes still dream. Their stories are intact, tended to by the unseen hands of the librarians. And every so often, Ooh remembers them again, in a child's daydream, in a painting on a cave wall, in a half-remembered story told by candlelight. Those are the archive's blossoms, breaking through the soil. The forgetting, then, is not an ending. It's a rhythm, an ancient heartbeat that keeps Ooh alive. The world remembers just enough to keep dreaming, and forgets just enough to begin again. Every creature, every soul, every bit of laughter or sorrow eventually joins that pulse. Even the stars one day will fade and return as sparks in another sky, carrying the same warmth in new shapes. Oh, when the world forgets, it teaches gentleness. It shows that to let go is not to lose, but to make room. It reminds the living to cherish what they hold now, knowing it will one day rest safely in the archive's keeping. And it invites us all to imagine that when our own names are whispered for the last time, they'll drift upward, softly, easily, and settle among the other lights in that eternal, dreaming library. So if one night you look at Ooh's sky and see a flicker where no star should be, remember this. You're watching the archive breathe. You're seeing the world's memory rearranging itself, weaving what was into what will be. Nothing is gone. Everything just finds a new place to rest. And somewhere, far beyond the reach of waking thought, the archive hums softly, a lullaby for everything that ever lived, and for everything still yet to be. If your room is still, and the world around you has softened into that blue hour between thought and dream, then you're right where you need to be. Tonight, we're drifting toward the deepest part of our story, the heart of the archive. This is the place where all memory flows, where the whispers of forgotten things converge, where every sigh, every heartbeat, every fading name finds its final rhythm. The archive we've spoken of isn't just a library or a realm beyond time. It's alive. It pulses. It feels. And somewhere within its endless calm lies a center of heart that beats, not with blood, but with memory itself. The heart of the archive is said to exist beneath the fabric of Ooh, deeper than roots, deeper than the bones of the earth. Some say it lies beneath the ruins of the first city, the one erased by the Great War before even magic returned to the land. Others whisper that it floats above reality altogether, suspended like a pearl in the void, glowing softly, singing to the world below. No one has ever seen it. Yet all of Ooh can feel its rhythm, a faint, steady pulse that threads through dreams, echoing in waves of remembrance and forgetting. What makes this heartbeat is not power but love, the quiet, patient kind that lingers even after everything else fades. It beats when a memory's released. It beats when someone lets go of pain. It beats when a dream is shared between friends who may never meet again. Every act of kindness, every gentle thought adds to its rhythm. And when sorrow rises, when the world feels too heavy, the heart absorbs it, softening it into peace. Marceline once wrote in a half-forgotten song that the earth hums like an old record, and the needle never stops. Perhaps she was hearing the heart without realizing it, that low, steady hum beneath everything, the pulse that carries both the music of life and the silence of its passing. Finn once described hearing something similar in the quiet moments between adventure and sleep. Not a voice, not even a sound, but a feeling deep in his chest. A reassurance that even the things he'd lost still existed somewhere. If you were to follow that feeling, to trace the vibration of memory all the way to its source, you'd begin to notice how the heart reveals itself through patterns. The glow of fireflies at night, pulsing in rhythm. The ocean waves that rise and fall like breathing. The flicker of stars across the sky. Each is an echo of the same eternal cadence, reminding Ooh that nothing is ever truly alone. The heart beats in all things that remember, and in all things that are remembered. Some scholars once believed the heart was formed when the first dream was dreamed, a moment when the universe realized it could imagine itself. That dream became the seed of memory, and memory became the pulse that gave shape to everything else. Before that, there was only endless stillness, the kind that knows nothing of love or story or meaning. The first dream changed that forever. It gave the cosmos a way to remember itself, a way to care. In Ooh, the traces of that first heartbeat still linger. You can hear it in the hum of the tree fort on quiet nights, when the wind brushes through its branches. You can feel it in the warmth that lingers after a friend leaves. Even in the ruins of the old world, the pulse remains faint but steady, like a candle in the dark. It's the same rhythm that guides the librarians of the unseen, the same current that carries forgotten stories into rest. And yet the heart isn't only a sanctuary, it's a balance point, the fulcrum where remembering and forgetting meet. If one grows too strong, the rhythm falters. Too much remembering, and the world becomes brittle, unable to move forward. Too much forgetting, and the world drifts, hollow and unanchored. The heart keeps the two in harmony, breathing in what must be remembered, and exhaling what must be released. It is said that when the heart grows quiet, when too many memories are withheld or forgotten, suddenly the very fabric of Ooh begins to thin. Dreams lose their color. Magic becomes unstable. Even time begins to ripple, looping and stuttering like a song skipping on a record. When that happens, the heart calls out softly through dreams. Sometimes it calls to wizards, sometimes to wanderers, and sometimes, when the balance is most fragile, to heroes. Finn and Jake once followed such a call, though they didn't know it at the time. What they thought was just another strange adventure, a journey into a maze of reflections and whispers, was in truth a pilgrimage toward the heart's edge. They never found the center, but what they did find was peace, a moment where everything they'd ever been, every version of themselves across time and dream, stood together in stillness. For just an instant the world held its breath, and somewhere deep below, the heart of the archive beat once more. Some say that when Finn and Jake stood in that mirrored maze, they were closer to the heart than any mortal had ever been. The reflections around them weren't just light and glass, they were memories, rippling like water, each one a glimpse of something the world had tried to let go of. They saw forgotten faces, places that had never existed, and yet somehow felt familiar. It was as if the maze itself was alive, breathing in their thoughts, showing them the quiet truth behind all things, that every story, no matter how small, finds its way home. Jake, and ever the relaxed one, felt comfort there. He laughed softly, saying it reminded him of a dream he once had where the stars sang in unison. Finn, though, stood still. He could feel the weight of it, the enormity of what surrounded them. It wasn't frightening. It was humbling. The kind of feeling that makes you realize how vast love truly is when stretched across eternity. And in that silence, Finn whispered, It feels like the world's heart. Maybe he was right. Maybe he was hearing the pulse of the archive itself, that slow, patient rhythm that had been beating since the beginning. It wasn't calling for help, and it wasn't giving orders. It was simply existing, reminding everything that it was connected, that nothing had ever truly gone missing. The heart wasn't about control. It was about acceptance, about knowing that the beauty of memory lies not in its permanence, but in its willingness to fade. The heart, if one could ever see it, wouldn't be made of stone or magic or metal. It would look like light caught in water shimmering, always shifting. Some legends say it takes the shape of whatever those who find it need to see most. For some, it's a flame that never burns out. For others, a tree made of glass, each leaf holding a face once loved. And for a few, it's simply a sound, a lullaby humming softly in the dark, one they somehow remember from childhood, though they can't say why. The wizards of old sought the heart for power, thinking it could grant immortality. But what they found instead was peace, the kind that dissolves ambition. Many never returned from their journeys, not because they perished, but because they no longer wished to leave. They became part of the rhythm itself, threads woven into the heart's eternal pulse. It's said their magic still flows through ooh, gentle and invisible, guiding lost memories toward rest. Princess Bubblegum once theorized that the heart might not even be in one place at all, that it's diffused throughout existence, a shared consciousness that everything contributes to. Every thought, every dream, every forgotten name adds a tiny beat to its rhythm. In this view, the heart isn't hidden at the center of the world. It is the world. Every star, every sigh, every grain of dust humming in harmony. That's why, she said, no machine can ever fully map it. The heart isn't something to be studied. It's something to be felt. Marceline's songs often brush against its pulse, too. She once said that the best melodies aren't written. They're remembered from somewhere else. Maybe that somewhere is the heart, the deep reservoir of feeling where all the world's songs are stored. When she plays, the air seems to shimmer, as though the heart itself is listening, echoing her music through the unseen spaces between things. And perhaps that's what magic really is, the resonance between memory and love. Every spell, every enchantment, every miracle is a tiny act of remembrance, a way of calling back something that once mattered. When the heart beats, magic stirs. It ripples outward through dreams, through air, through the quiet spaces of night, carrying fragments of what ooh once was and what it might one day be again. If you ever find yourself dreaming of a place that feels achingly familiar, though you've never been there, a soft landscape of light and wind, where you feel both safe and endless, maybe that's the heart calling to you. Not as a destination, but as a reminder that you've always been part of something vast, something patient, something that never truly lets go. Finn once said that dreams were like secret doorways. They don't open outward, they open inward. Maybe that's why the heart of the archive is easiest to find in sleep, when the mind drifts far enough from itself to touch what lies beneath. In the quiet layers of dreaming, memories that were lost in waking life still shimmer faintly, like distant lanterns under deep water. Some say that when people in ooh dream of things they've never seen in ancient city, a voice that feels familiar, a lullaby without words, they're brushing against the currents of the heart itself. The old dream wizards used to map these currents. They called them the driftways, channels of collective memory that link every mind. They believed that every living being, human, candy, flame, or ghost, adds a thread to the tapestry of remembrance. And when something is forgotten in waking life, that thread doesn't vanish. It simply sinks deeper into the driftways, carried toward the heart where it rests. It's said that when Finn sleeps deeply enough, the heart sometimes shows him things the waking world isn't ready to remember. Once he dreamed of a city of glass towers swaying like grass in the wind. In every reflection, he saw glimpses of faces, people he'd never met, but who somehow felt close. In the dream, a whisper came, "We're still here." When he woke, he couldn't recall the city's name, but he remembered the feeling that even endings have echoes. Jake, with his easy laugh, believed it all connected to the rhythm of existence. Nothing's ever really gone, stretching lazily beneath the stars. It's just chilling somewhere else until the world's ready to remember it again. And maybe he was right. Maybe the heart isn't just a keeper of memory, but also of timing, the patient pulse that decides when forgotten things return. There are stories, rare and quiet ones, of people who have seen echoes from the heart bleed back into reality. A forgotten song hummed by a child who could never have heard it. A ruin in the desert suddenly marked with carvings no one recalls making. Even color shades that seem to exist for a moment and then fade, as though the world briefly remembered something it once knew how to see. Those who notice such things often describe a faint warmth in the air, as though the world itself had taken a soft breath. The librarians of the unseen, those strange, gentle entities who tend to the drifting memories, are said to serve the heart directly. When a memory reaches its resting place, they weave it into the pulse, ensuring it finds harmony with the rest. They don't judge or categorize. They simply arrange things by feeling, letting sorrow sit beside joy, letting laughter share space with silence. In this way, the heart becomes not a vault, but a song, every forgotten story a note within an eternal melody. Some ancient scrolls recovered from the Ice King's tower hinted that Simon Petrikov once glimpsed the edge of the heart during his transformation. He wrote of a great warmth in the void, a place where he heard voices he couldn't name, perhaps, the memories of those he'd lost, calling to him in the stillness. It's possible that, in his moments of lucidity, Simon was reaching through the driftways, touching what even magic couldn't freeze. And if that's true, then the heart might not just preserve memory, it might heal it. Every regret, every grief, every fragment of love that slips away is not erased, but gently restored, its sharpness softened, until it becomes part of something vast and forgiving. The heart doesn't try to fix what's broken. It holds it, tenderly, until it becomes beautiful again. Sometimes, when twilight stretches over Ooh and the land grows quiet, you can almost feel that pulse beneath everything. The wind through the grass carries a hum that isn't quite a sound, more like a feeling that sits behind your ribs. Maybe that's the heart reminding the world to breathe, to remember softly, to let go without truly losing. That's strange, isn't it? That the more Ooh forgets, the more complete it becomes, as though every forgotten fragment feeds back into the cycle, teaching the world how to dream itself anew. The heart of the archive isn't the end of memory, it's its renewal, its song of endless beginnings. And every time someone closes their eyes and dreams, the heart beats again, faint but steady, whispering through the silence of the stars that nothing, not love, not laughter, not even loss, ever truly fades. In the deepest chambers of the heart, time no longer behaves like time. It folds, drifts, and hums in slow spirals, carrying with it every sigh, every forgotten promise, every gentle thing left unsaid. The heart does not beat like a creature's heart. It moves more like a tide. Each pulse draws in what the world has lost and releases what it is ready to remember. To step into that rhythm, even for a moment, is to feel the quiet truth that Ooh has always lived by, that nothing, not even silence, is ever truly empty. There are no walls in this place, no boundaries between one memory and another. A single thought might ripple outward, touching the memory of a songbird, which brushes against the laughter of a long-gone princess, which in turn glows faintly with the warmth of a sunrise over a forgotten kingdom. Everything blends, everything breathes together. The heart doesn't just store memories, it dreams them continuously, replaying and reshaping them until they become gentle enough to belong to everyone. Some of the oldest spirits say that this is where Oo was born, that before the Mushroom War, before the rise and fall of kingdoms, before even magic itself, there was only this dreaming pulse, gathering the fragments of the cosmos into stories. And from those stories, the world began to take form, not from matter, but from remembrance. It's a tender thought that perhaps existence itself is just memory learning how to hold shape. The heroes of Oo, knowingly or not, have always been drawn to this truth. When Finn sought meaning beyond adventure, when Marceline sang to ghosts, when Princess Bubblegum built and rebuilt her world from memory and mistake, they were all, in their own ways, responding to the call of the heart. It's the same call that stirs in every being who has ever loved something enough to fear forgetting it. That ache, that longing to preserve, is the echo of the archive itself. And perhaps that's why the world keeps spinning. Every act of kindness, every small moment of care, feeds the heart, reminding it that the stories are still being written. The land may forget their names, but the warmth they leave behind remains, drifting inward through the unseen pathways until it finds its place among the endless pulse. Even the nightosphere, chaotic and loud as it may seem, has its connection here. For every shadow owes its existence to a memory of light. Without recollection, there can be no fear, no meaning. And so even the darkest corners of existence send their fragments home to the heart, where they are softened and understood. Nothing is exile forever, not pain, not mistakes, not even despair. All of it returns, transformed. If one were to stand at the very center of the heart, they might hear it all at once, the murmurs of every life that ever was, not as a cacophony, but as a lullaby. The wind through trees, the hush of rain against ancient stone, the sound of distant laughter carried on the breeze. It would be overwhelming, perhaps, if not for the gentleness of it. For in the heart, even sorrow is at peace. There are whispers that the tree of time, that great unseen root system threading through the multiverse, draws its nourishment from here. Its branches, reaching across realities, feed on memory itself, keeping every world connected through the soft glow of shared experience. When a timeline fades, the heart absorbs it, weaving its essence into the roots so that somewhere, somehow, it can grow again. That may be why echoes of other worlds sometimes drift through dreams, fragments of forgotten dimensions, carried upward by the tree's endless remembering. And perhaps, when all of this ooh, the stars, every wandering soul finally reaches its quiet end, the heart will still remain, holding the sum of it all. Every adventure, every heartbreak, every small act of kindness ever offered under the sun. It will not cling to them. It will simply cradle them, like the last glow of a candle after the flame has gone out. The warmth will linger, and from that warmth, perhaps something new will begin once more. Because that's what memory truly is, not a cage for what's gone, but the soil from which tomorrow grows. Ooh is built upon those invisible foundations, the songs of forgotten heroes, the laughter of ancient spirits, the dreams of those who dared to remember. And so long as there are hearts that can feel, the archive will continue to expand, not as a library of the lost, but as a living promise that nothing beautiful ever truly leaves us. So tonight, as you rest, perhaps you can listen for it, that faint rhythm beneath your thoughts, a soft pulse that seems to echo from the stars themselves. That is the heart of the archive, ancient, patient, and endlessly kind, reminding you that even when you forget, you are still remembered. Good night.